And it is Webinar Wednesday. Welcome back if you're returning, and welcome if this is your first time, if you're just tuning in. I am Diane Michael with Callan Group Communications and Beyond the Boardroom, and I'm here with my friend and partner, Lindsay Lombardi with Coastal Living Association Management and Dominion Management. I'm also here with two women that you will get a treat from today for their presentation. For those of you that have been with us before, you know that we always start right on time, and we appreciate you guys being here and being attentive and listening to our free education program. Our goal at Beyond the Boardroom is to educate board members and CAMs in an easy way at your desk, on your phone, while you're traveling. We want to make it as easy as possible to get those credited hours that you need. And you need to, I think it's every even year. Lindsay will confirm, but I think it's at September. And we recommend that you do not wait till the last minute because the DBPR, Lindsay will also go over that. The DBPR sometimes takes a little bit of time to get the credits all in and registered. And registered isn't the right word. Credited. The more you learn, the more you earn is a quote that I like to say from Warren Buffett. We know exactly how important education and CE credits are, and that's why we decided to launch this Beyond the Boardroom program outside of our regular jobs. So we started on the fourth Wednesday of each month, and we've already grown to now offer this education for free on the second and fourth Wednesdays. So please mark your calendars for the next webinar Wednesday happening on May 27th. We have received 6 new association allies, which we've coined as our vendors, presenters this year already. So we have new courses that are coming, and we keep building out our education program and portfolio. So keep watching the emails and be sure to save us as safe senders. You get an email from me every single week. So if you're not seeing it every week, that means it may be going into a junk box or a spam box. So you'll want to check those and save that email as a safe sender, never block, and not junk mail, so that you can continue to get the updates that we provide, as we will be continuing to provide more courses that are for CAMs and board members. For the board member credits, we will always highlight that they are board member credits big time, because most of the programs are for CAMs. We know that board members need credits, and we are working with presenters to get them credits. We always recommend that board members attend these presentations because they get to meet the potential vendors that they can work with in their bid process, and also to be educated on what's current and what's going on in the season. Okay, guys, we always love to show our presenters where everyone is coming in from. So if you'll put in the chat where you're coming in from. Let's see. Let's make sure attendees can chat with everyone. Yep, go ahead into the chat and show these ladies where you're coming in from. If you're a board member, we'd love to see that as well. After a couple minutes, I'll go ahead and turn the chat off. If you have questions during the presentation, throw them in the Q&A and we will go over them at the end. I'm also going to put the remainder of today's agenda in the chat afterwards, and be looking for that. Lindsay, do you want to go over how credits work for us, please?
Sure. So I'm going to make this one short and sweet, and I'll go into more detail at the end of the course. Please stay on for the entire course. In order to get credit today, you will need to have a code word that we will provide at the end that shows us that you stayed for the entire course with Kathy and Ruth. You'll go to the link that we provide you and put your first name, middle initial, and last name as it is stated on your CAM license, along with your CAM license number. Check and make sure you have that handy. And then you will submit that along with the course title for today, and the code word, which I will put in the chat again at the end of the course so that you have all that information to be able to submit for credit today.
Okay, great. So like I said, we are in for a treat with Vote HOA now. We have Ruth and Kathy. They've been with us before, so welcome back, ladies. Vote HOA now is the industry experts in electronic voting, providing full service management of online voting for director elections, amendment votes, Yeah, amendment votes and any other membership votes and surveys. Vote HOA now helps communities achieve quorum while saving both time and money. Very important, both. With years of experience, Vote HOA now has been a prominent presence in the industry, hosting online webinars like today and presentations across the country, participating in CAI trade shows nationwide, and contributing to roundtable discussions, all to enhance electronic voting education and support for the industry. Welcome, ladies.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Diane and Lindsay. We're excited to be here. Our level of passion for education is the same as your team, and thank you for having us. So today, Ruth and we were prior managers. We both been with Vote HOA now almost 10 years, I think we can say. So online voting, of course, is nothing new. We like to say that because lots of times it's the first time that you're exploring or looking at it. So thank you for joining us. And we are going to get into the deep dive of navigating the choices for electronic voting and overcoming challenges, all while we have fun today.
Yes. But before we get to the fun stuff, we have to do some legalese. Our legal disclaimer, we are not your attorneys. This is not considered legal guidance, knowledge. We're just giving you some information of what's out there, what can be done. If you have questions, you should definitely ask your legal counsel about your own association specific needs. This can't be considered legal advice. We're not your attorneys, and you are not considered our client with this presentation. So just for educational purposes. That's the short way of saying all that whole paragraph.
That was really good.
All right, so today's outline, we're going to go over the legal overview, where you get the authority for electronic voting, and again, a little bit more legalese in there. And then we'll provide you some of the service provider options for running votes. We'll give you a good overview on that. And then we get into the deep dive. These are our favorite parts. First deep dive is about writing and crafting your e-voting resolution and what goes into that and gets you thinking of all those fun things. And then the second deep dive, we kind of go over all the misconceptions and myths that we've heard throughout the years when it comes to electronic voting. And I think we usually, by the time we even get to the second deep dive, we've already dispelled most of those myths. So to start, we're going to go the legal overview. And again, we're looking, not again, but we are looking at the Florida specific e-voting codes, the statutes, to know where you get your authority to run an electronic vote. So they come from a number of different places for Florida. If you're a condominium, you're going to find it in your Florida condominium statute 718. And I've written down here where they are specifically. There's some additional administrative code rules for condominiums in a few sections. Co-ops have it written into their section 719 and the HOA statute 720. So there are laws in each of those statutes specifically to electronic voting. Other things to consider when you're looking for, not just looking for electronic voting, but looking for the words electronic notice for your meeting, for your election or a vote, and owner date of record. And now for today's purposes, when we're talking about electronic voting, we're not talking about the e-voting by email. We will cover that briefly today, but we're talking about an electronic or online system where somebody registers and secures their vote electronically and gets a receipt and things like that. So not by email. We're not talking about scanning a piece of paper or taking a screenshot, that kind of stuff. So we're specifically, when you're looking at these statutes, what are you looking for in the code? So lots of different language, and this can change. It's pretty static for Florida right now. Your laws have been around for a while and they got updated a few years ago. So we don't see much change in them recently. But when you're reading through those statutes, it's important to go through them and read them and make sure that you understand them. They're pretty well written for Florida, that they're not using a lot of highfalutin terminology that's hard to understand. So, but you're looking for the language electronic or online combined with ballot, voting, elections, things like that. And a lot of times the statutes will use the word electronic or online interchangeably. And this is throughout the country. So if you move from Florida at some point, you may find similar language, but may have substituted the word electronic for online. As I mentioned just briefly, you'll also look for the electronic notice. Now in Florida, there's separate items written about electronic notice and the electronic voting, as most states have. So keep that in mind. One in electronic notice and electronic voting are not the same thing. Notice of course, notice for your meeting. You're also going to look for language regarding that your ballots or your e-votes count towards your meeting quorums. So really nice. Florida has that in there, and I'll show you that in just a moment. One of the things you'll not see in the code is the word that a proxy is needed with your e-vote, with your electronic vote. People kind of always just assume, but then I say, well, where is that written? And they go, oh, it's absent. Exactly. It's not stated that you need a proxy with your electronic vote. So look for that, or look for that not to be there. It's kind of hard to find something when it's missing, but you'll notice that. And then, of course, that ballots also, or your votes count towards any reconvene, adjournment thereof. If you have a weather scenario, for example, and you need to postpone a meeting, making sure that those e-votes can be used for that future meeting. So when we're looking at the statute, I pulled up the condo statute and have that written out for you here. The HOA statute is almost identical. So for all intents purposes, we're just going to use the condo statute for now. So the statute for electronic voting says that association may conduct elections and other unit owner votes through an internet-based online voting system if a unit owner consents electronically or in writing to online voting. Really simple. So basically, the owner has to consent to it, and you can consent right when you're doing the vote because they can consent electronically. You can also have them consent in advance if you want to start that process and have that on file for your certificates of voting records. And it goes on to state that the system that you're using must authenticate that owner's identity, has to still protect the secrecy and integrity of each ballot, so it has to still be a secret vote, and has to confirm a method, have a method to confirm delivery. Typically, a receipt is that method to confirm delivery. It goes on to state that the online voting system has to authenticate their identity, so kind of repetitive a little bit, ensure the vote is not altered in transit, transmit a voting receipt to the owner, and then permanently separate any authentication or identifying information. Again, that secret vote. So you also have to have a system that's going to keep that data for you and be available for a recount, inspection, or review. The statute goes on to state that the e-votes count towards quorum for the meeting. How convenient. That's really the best part of e-voting. Kathy and I used it when we were clients and loved it. So that's really what this is all about, making sure you have quorum going to that meeting. These e-votes help you get there. So that's what this whole paragraph is about. It goes on to state that you have to create a resolution. So this is the board's responsibility here now. If they're going to authorize electronic voting, the board must have a resolution. For a condo, one of the items that this is different from a condo than an HOA, that if the board authorizes electronic voting, they have to honor an owner's request to use electronic voting in all subsequent elections. So once you offer it, you can't take it away if you're a condo. Keep that in mind, unless the owner opts out of electronic voting. So if all of your owners then opt out in the future, then you don't have to have it. But the resolution also has to provide that owners receive notice of the opportunity to vote for this through the online voting system. So you have to include that language in your notice. And we'll give you, I think we talk about that notice language quite a bit in your resolution and things. You also must establish reasonable procedures and deadlines for owners to consent to the online voting. So any reasonable procedure, of course. And then was the last bullet here was in the condo law and then changed. It got removed. It's still in the HOA about the timing that you have to provide notice to your association that you have this resolution crafted and it's going to be allowing electronic voting. So that last bullet, great to know for your HOAs. Condos, you don't have quite that timing need anymore. So we did mention it briefly that we've been talking about electronic voting using an online or internet-based system. There is a new part of your law, it's been around for a little bit now, that electronic ballots through an email system is also allowed. So different from the online voting system. So if this is a little tricky. So if the association has not adopted electronic voting, they must now designate an email address to be sent electronic ballots or to be sent ballots from their owners by screenshotting or taking a picture of a paper ballot and having it emailed, or you can email a ballot out, something like that. They can transmit that ballot to that email address designated by the association and has to comply with rules. But they must also be told that their ballot is no longer going to be secret, because you have to see who's voting and how they're voting if you're getting an email. So that's what this slide really covers. So they have to let the owners know that they have to be able to type in, if it's an email, a space to put in their name, their unit number, and that's their signature on their ballot. And then that language at the bottom that you have to put in there, that that vote is no longer secret. So by somebody emailing in a ballot, they're losing their right to have that secrecy requirement. Kathy, any note on that?
Yeah, well, it is really important to understand the difference between the two. And if you think you're going to do it, like Ruth said, set yourself some standards that everyone should provide the correct information and all the information, or their ballot would not be able to be submitted. And, advertise, of course, that it is going to remove their secrecy, the privacy that they have for their vote. And I think they should say yes or no, and it should be a clear question to them. So,
Yeah.
but even though we think this is riddled with all kinds of risk and everything, it really can save these smaller associations, some funds right now while they need it. And it could be a good option if you can get everyone to do the same thing. But you still got a lot of work ahead to get your owners to buy in on giving up their
Yeah.
secrecy, I think. So,
Yeah, I would say if you're under 50 homes, maybe 50 units,
yeah.
anything larger, a couple hundred units, oh my God, it's going to be so problematic to tally that and
Yeah.
make sure people aren't trying to vote twice, and
Mm-hmm.
it's a lot
Right.
of work.
And,
Yeah.
having a duly elected board, reaching quorum, all of those things, are very important. In Florida, we are seeing the most requests to review final reports, ballots, all of those kind of things. And so, make sure that you're, making the right decision,
Yeah.
that if you're running a vote, an amendment, something that needs to be recorded, or an election, anything that's a document requirement probably should be handled by a third party provider, so
Yeah.
that you can
Set
have
yourself up
that,
for success.
yeah,
Yes.
that
And
group
we'll get
to
into a
help
little
you.
bit more about the different
Yeah.
options that you can choose. So we did have a few additional codes that I wanted to go over briefly. And the top one here is about the condo code. There was an additional administrative code, and this is specifically about elections and your timing. So you can see here, the first bullet is that you have to have a minimum of 14 days of voting. So make sure that you're allowing enough time. You have to do your notice with your call for candidates, get those candidates in, vet them, make sure you have that voting window at least 2 weeks. And depending on your passing, your quorum requirements, that kind of thing, you may need more than 2 weeks. Larger associations, over 1,000 homes, sometimes even 500 homes, might need 3 weeks of voting. People, don't always look at all their emails all the time if they're on vacation and things like that. So considering the timing of that too. Candidates must be listed in alphabetical order by last name. We're finding that more and more all over the place, that's just the standard. And it's a good standard practice to have. You cannot say the word incumbent with the name of the candidates. So it's okay if the candidate submits a paragraph of intent of why they're running, saying I was the previous board treasurer or something like that, but you can't list their name, comma, incumbent. So that's no more allowed. You don't have write-ins on your ballots, which is
Yeah.
really nice.
So
You don't have to
lucky.
worry about that. Yeah. You do your call for candidates, you get those nominations in, you put them on the ballot, and that's it. Love it. And then of course the secret ballot. So no identifiers, make sure that whatever system you're using, people are not writing their name and address on their ballot itself. You have to separate all that out. So no one can know how any particular person voted. So then we have one more statute, and this is my last one, I swear. There's a corporation code, and it's about the owner date of record. And a lot of people, even a lot of people years ago never understood what this was. And this is in your date of determining who is eligible to receive notice and who is eligible to vote gets set by what's called the owner date of record. So if it's not covered in your bylaws, you're going to go to this corporation code. And it says that the record date for determining shareholders entitled to notice of and to vote at an annual or special shareholders meeting is the close of business on the day before the first notice is delivered to shareholders. So typically that's the day you're pulling your owner list and you're sending it in the, you're printing off your labels and stuffing envelopes, and then it goes in the mail. So during an election, you're not moving owners in and out. So if somebody 2 weeks, your voting period is 2 weeks, and somebody moves in 3 days after the voting opens, your date of record was already established. You don't have to worry about owners switching in and out. Now, that's different if you're running an amendment vote, you typically have those owners changes happening. So, and again, that's something that would be really hard to monitor and take care of if you're doing e-votes and in-person voting and paper. And so try, as Kathy mentioned, to stick with just like one or two if you can. Offer e-voting and maybe that hybrid paper. So I mentioned it once before, the wording we're not seeing in the statute, proxies. So really helpful that we are removing a lot of those proxies, gets removed from the e-voting system. People may still want a proxy if they can't attend the meeting and want to give their neighbor to vote on their behalf in person, something like that. But you really reduce the proxies and the confusion. We find that people just like voting. They like doing a straight vote.
And we think, make those proxies and paper ballots available upon request. And
Yes.
that way you can kind of control that proxy collection and all the other things that happen before meetings sometimes that we're kind of aware of, but we're not aware of.
Yeah. Yeah. When the person comes to the meeting and has, printed their own proxy form and brought 100 of them with them that are not necessarily valid. Yeah. So there's a lot of people that always think, well, my documents don't allow for electronic voting. What do I do? Well, as we've just gone over, the state statute provides for it. So if you remember from your early days of being a CAM, in the early lessons we learned the hierarchy of documents. Have to remember federal, state statute. That's where this comes in, all these state statutes. And then it drops down to your declaration, your articles, your bylaws. So unless your governing documents for your association says something like you cannot use any technology to vote or electronic voting is not allowed, something like that, your state
electronic
statute,
means.
yes, your state statute is going to give you that authority. So, and again, creating that resolution. So yes, I'm sure everyone remembers this pyramid. It's like embedded in my brain.
It is one of my favorite slides, though. I do like the look of it.
Okay, so we got through all the fun legal stuff. So in considering where we're at in the future of the internet and society, we have to look at trends that shape our paths, right? We have to see like what's coming, what do we need to be prepared for? I mean, that's why you guys are on all of these things to learn about what's coming in the future. So we do have some stats of some housing trends, and these are really fun. Kathy, you want to pick out some of your favorites?
I will, yes. 30 to 40% of community associations that are self-managed. That leaves about 60% that are with management companies out of all of the hundreds. Florida Florida and California are running, neck and neck of having the most HOAs, condos, co-ops, timeshare. So I think that's a fun one. Community
especially because that
managers
means that board members are running those kind of things and running a vote. And that's a lot of work for boards to do.
It is a lot of work. Yeah. Well, it is a lot of work. And the last bullet point is the funnest one about that. 3.4 billion estimated value of time provided by homeowner board and committee members. Thank you so much for working for free.
Yeah.
And managers, that hopefully they're a gift to you and they're helping you.
Yes. And I like the middle one, 2.5 million association elected boards and committee members. So those are all those votes that are getting run. They're electing 2.5 million people. So we also have some eco stats. We can see that switching from paper to electronic voting can save over 25 pounds of paper for 1,000 unit building or association. Huge, huge impact you can have on the world of today.
And that's just the paper. That's not the postage or the printing or anything else that goes along with that mailing.
So switching to electronic voting really has that, gives you a warm, fuzzy feeling. It's got the lowest carbon footprint, lower environmental impact. And then, of course, in that same tone, you're increasing your owner's participation, getting them all involved. We've seen people voting from all across the world when they're voting in their elections. They don't want to miss out on them. They vote from cruise ships all over.
Mhm.
So I agree. I think you agree, Kathy. The future's here.
Yes,
It's online, right?
it's online. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
And some of the funnest questions, are some of the most misconceptions is about our older group. We talk about it during every webinar because we think they're some of our best voters.
Mhm.
They have the time, they open up their email, they're participating, they're checking their bank accounts, they're making their reservations. All kinds of things are now pushing them to electronic. And we've gone 1,000 miles an hour since 2020, of course. So
Yeah.
fun to know, they're responding, even ages 80 and up, 44% report using the internet.
And actually, we just got some new stats. So the same stat is 96% for adults as of November 2025. But the Gen Z number, that has gone up by 1%. It's now 5% of our home buyer market. And, they were born with a phone in their hand, basically. So, yeah, don't
Well,
just
their mom was holding the phone while she gave birth while they were.
So don't discount your association of like, oh, I have older 75 is the average age. They're voting, they're doing things online, they're handling their finances. And you really want to make sure that you're including those younger groups who that's all they do is everything electronically.
Well, and I think the obvious part of everything, electronic versus paper, is that you can deliver a notice or information to an owner a lot quicker than you can by mail these days. You can confirm that it was delivered because you did not receive a
The mail
bounce
form.
back,
Yeah.
an email bounce back. So, just really opening up a lot of opportunities for every community to be successful.
So we have a couple different choices when it comes to electronic voting with our service providers. We're going to give you a nice little brief overview of those. If I can get my slide to change. There we go.
Okay. So, service level choices, along with having a million e-voting companies out there these days, and they're, all looking for business, it's important to know that there are some service levels. Full service provider, this is really the highest security level. It does free up the managers, board members, committee members to continue on managing the association and the association business. It is almost like, letting the professionals do what they do best. You wouldn't have your doctor be your lawyer at your HOA, court or anything like that. It's truly a third party separation. It just means they're going to do everything for you. And most of these full service providers are going to stand behind you before, during, and after your vote. So there really is a lot of value if someone's asking to look at reports or you're having a request for documents or something like that. You can be at the highest professional level that you've ever been at. Now, of course, it's below first service because it is second. Self-service portals and the management company softwares. They're some of our biggest competitors because they're easy to get to, they're cheap. You feel like you are saving money, but really, you are placing more risk on the manager for doing that work, or maybe a board member or a committee member. There's a process that needs to be followed clearly with the state statutes that we all looked at this morning about every step of the way. And someone could know all of those steps this year, but then they move out of the neighborhood or you change managers and you've just gotten someone like me to be your manager. I know everything about your documents and I'm really good at that, but ask me to do any kind of technology and I can't. I just don't get it. I don't feel comfortable with it. I mean, I'm saying that, but I do work at Vote HOA now. I don't feel comfortable with it. And so, those changes are what kill us. And we have to go to a new thing or system or process all the time. And it really, it does not earn trust when you're using a full service provider. They begin to trust that system and that provider and that process. So definitely more work for the manager, committee, everybody involved. No third party, no help, no anyone to ask questions of or anything.
Just
More
lots more
risk.
risk too.
Yeah, there
Yes.
really is.
Yeah.
Yes, more
How do you
risk.
know you set it up
Yeah.
right? How do you know all that stuff? Right. So
Mhm.
then the
Write
last one
down
there,
everything.
yeah, the
Yeah.
little asterisk in red, we come across this all the time. There are some free or almost free platforms out there. I know you all know the one we're talking about mostly because we get
Mhm.
surveys on there. Why are they free? So you have to ask yourself that. Well, why is that free? It's free because your owner data file that you're going to upload to create that vote is the work product. They want those emails. They're going to put them on the list. They're going to sell them. Why are those things free? There's got to be a reason. So that's the reason. So keep that in mind when it happens a lot when you see a
Mhm.
dollar amount that you weren't expecting and you think, "Oh, I can get this cheaper." Well, why is it cheaper on this self-service type platform there on that model? So keep that in mind. When we're talking about full service and self-service, yes, so we think that obviously we think that you should use a full service, but even when it comes to full service, not all vendors are the same. Kathy, you want to go over some of that?
Yeah, it is nice. Ask your vendor that you're interviewing if they are familiar with the community association industry and do they understand the state statutes. That would be the first question that I would be asking to make sure that they are comfortable with setting all those parameters for the vote and everything. Has HOA condo management experience? That kind of goes with the first one. And of course, provides education, is there to help you, answers their phone, and those kind of things. It's okay to ask your provider if they are experienced in this
Yeah.
industry.
It's funny. I was talking to somebody the
Mhm.
other day in Florida, actually, and they were had used this system last year for their vote. It was a self-service system based in Australia. And they were trying to do a chat with them to get answers and get some help. And the time change difference was like so extraordinary. It took, a day for a message to come back and forth. And then even the terminology wasn't the same. They kept calling their condo a strata. And the board member I was talking to was like, it took us a minute to figure out what they were talking about when they were saying strata. And that's so just little things like that can really throw your whole vote off. We do have a question, Kathy, in the Q&A here that we'll get to right now since before we get into the deep dive. They have a board who passed a resolution and had a great participation. However, there were several who did not respond or not want to participate. The association only required one mailing to go out for the annual. If they did not consent and no second mailing goes out, then the only way for them to know who the candidates are is to attend the meeting and to
Mm,
vote.
mm. Right. Well, I think that you're always going to have those people that don't do anything. And we
Right.
just can expect that, unfortunately. We're getting more and more. And, electronically we can reach them more often than we can by paper. I guess it all depends, manager, if you're having a virtual, a hybrid, an in-person meeting, what voting options you're going to offer at that meeting. So I think if you're having those in-person meetings, you have to be prepared to accept you can to hand out a paper
Right.
ballot. Make sure you know who has already voted and who has not voted so that you're only
Right.
issuing paper ballots to those
And
who
keep
have voted.
right. And keep in mind that when you're doing an electronic vote, ask that
Mhm.
vendor when you're talking to them, do they include follow-up emails? So if they didn't consent
Mhm.
initially with the first invite that goes out, make sure you're getting additional invites because they can consent at the same time as their votes. And make sure your provider can do that, sending out multiple emails and reminders to those who haven't voted.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We do have
And,
another question.
it might be smart to say that, Florida does require that you say yes or no. And so that would be really easy for them to click yes.
And then we have a question, do owners have to consent every year?
Mm, mm. No, they do not. Once they have consented and they've opted in, they only have to opt out if they're not interested. So consent goes on forever. And your electronic voting record is the record of everyone who consented in the last vote. So if you're doing it on your own, remember, keep your records.
Right. And if you're doing it on your own or with a company who's not familiar with the Florida statute, have the consent language right on the invite stating that by participating in this electronic vote, you're consenting to vote electronically, and make sure
Mhm,
that they have to
mhm.
provide their email for their receipt, things like that. Great
Yeah,
questions.
yeah, yeah. That receipt is the most important thing at the end.
Right. All right.
Okay,
Well, let's
let's
get into the
dive
deep.
in.
Let's dive
Let's do it.
in. Okay,
Yeah.
so all of this talk has led us to that first point that we said in the statute that the board has to create a resolution, right? And there's so much that can go in here. We have like, I think 4 pages of things. So we're gonna go through
I
each
think so too.
briefly and give you some thoughts and ideas. But your association's legal counsel may already have something written. So that's going to be your first stop if you don't have one already, is to ask them. But then keep all these things in mind when you're reviewing that. Go for it,
Yeah,
Kathy.
because you are going to customize it for your community's needs.
Yes.
So, be as concise as you can. We've given you a lot of legal information today, state statutes, Florida information. So, remembering all of those things, what type of meeting are we going to have? We just had that conversation, in person, online, or hybrid. All of them are coming back or they're becoming more and more popular. So it is great to discuss the process for accepting paper ballots and electronic ballots and how each of those. Let's say I'm having an online meeting occasionally, and then I might have a hybrid for my annual meeting or something like that. So timing, notice requirements. We went over that today. The best rule is 14 days of voting. Make sure that you've got at least 2 weeks. No one can complain about that, and that you're starting early, of course, to get ready. So, kind of set that day, that timing requirement, and let your owners know that they're going to receive that ballot with at least two, or that notice and ballot at least 2 weeks before the voting is over. The call for candidates period is becoming our best friend, and you can't take any no write-ins and no nominations from the floor. So it really makes it a nice online only meeting, because none of those really weird, awkward things are going to come up at that meeting. Candidate submissions, we're seeing them. They're so fun these days. Bios, paragraphs of intent, photos, videos. Electronic is anything can happen electronically. A lot different than looking at a paper ballot, setting it aside and not doing anything with it. So who should be involved? We mostly work with the manager, and the manager would consult with any legal representation. It's good to keep the board members, committee members out of the mix, so they're not put in the position of giving information, before voting closes. Your manager typically is your neutral party with no ownership in the association, available to answer questions, ability to provide all the ballot and vote information, of course, and to pull that, the most important information, the owner Excel spreadsheet. They're providing approvals, and of course, they get the duty of carrying that full final report to the meeting with them and announcing the results. So, more details, and these are just things to consider. And these are the funner things here. We've gotten past all the dry stuff now. Voting setup. What is the quorum? These might seem silly, but every vote has a different quorum, and it's good to know. Some might be 20%, some might be 51%, others 67. So we just did one the other day, need 100% consent for the community to do a project. So everything is a little different. Make sure you know what your quorum is. Are write-ins allowed? Secret ballots, I think we covered that. Secret, yes. No write-ins. and the voting time frame. It is recommended that it's at least 14 days, but like Ruth said, a little bit longer for bigger associations is nice. The positions, gosh, how quickly do people lose track of what term they're serving or how long? Make sure that you're referring back to your meeting minutes or any resources to make sure that you know how long your positions are. Put them in your resolution so everybody knows you've always got 1 1-year term, 2 2-year terms, and 1 3-year term, or whatever it is. That equals 4, so that probably isn't right. So maybe it's 2 3-year terms. Who can vote? The owner data record. Ruth covered that so clearly earlier, but it really is just when you are not recognizing changes of ownership. And we typically see that in an election. But it's great to say that you're going to follow the code for the owner data record in your resolutions. Paper mailings. What are we going to do? What are we going to send out? You'll receive a notice, or maybe if we don't have your email, you're going to receive a notice and a paper ballot. So let them know that, opting into online voting does save money, but you're still going to provide those products if they request them. So it does really so much. I tell this story. I hate to stop here and do this, but when we met quorum, like 2 weeks after our meeting, all the time in the office, if we had had all these ballots through the mail 2 weeks ago, we could have met quorum and not had to have a reconvene meeting. And, everything gets expensive then. But paper, you can only reach people once. Electronically, you can reach them 2 to 3 times a week. It's amazing how you can keep your email in front of them. What do you do if the paper?
Because we know as an email drops in your inbox, you're less likely to see it, read it, and respond. So
especially if you're getting ready to go on vacation, don't you just go delete, delete, delete?
Yeah, exactly.
I'll get to that when I get back. Paper mailings, what are needed, what to do if an owner votes by paper. And then all of a sudden they get this great idea to vote electronically. So you'll have to put down in your resolution which vote is going to prevail. And typically it is the electronic ballot, only because they've received a receipt, and it's the most professional thing with electronic voting that we've ever done for them. And then know your closing procedures. Some companies don't know to ask you if you have any closing procedures. Do you have delinquent owners that have voted that need to be removed? And is there any other processes that need to be followed before we close that vote? So very important. And you might put in your resolution, any delinquent owners 30 or 24 hours before the meeting will not have the ability to vote or the eligibility. And, those are all just things to remember. Your legal representative, of course, is going to help and guide you in those. The announcement of the results. Now, whoever thinks about this, we're always thinking about the beginning of the meeting, what's going on, what candidates do we have, the vote, everything. Are we just going to show the candidates that won? Are we going to show all the candidates with the total of the tallies of all the votes received for them? So put that in your resolution or have it in the back of your mind. It should always be the same process. This is our funnest one. We're getting more and more questions about this all the time. Tie votes. What are you going to do if you have a tie vote? I mean, we're no longer in houses or office buildings where we rip pieces of paper in half and come up with ballots and everything. But it is happening more and more often. So be sure you create a rule. Ruth has her favorite one.
Well, I have my favorite. So if anyone ever moves to Idaho, it's in their statute that the tie vote is done by a toss of the coin. How more clear can that be? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. If, usually one person will step down, but if, they're passionate about it, you have to have a process. Yeah. And
We've
then,
seen the
of course,
runoffs. We've seen them do runoffs.
We have, yes.
Yeah.
And then, of course, after any voting experience, anything that happens, update your resolutions, read through them, do it right after you've had your annual meeting. It's a great time to make sure that you're including all the most updated information, taking out things that didn't work, and putting in some new rules that will help you during the next meeting.
So, Kathy, we have one more question about the consent. Do unit owners need to give consent to use their email address?
No, they do not. but they do need to give consent to receive a notice electronically, and they do need to give consent by, moving forward and voting for electronic voting. But typically the email address is the property of the association. That's why it's so important to ask if they want to receive notices or information electronically. You can waive all that trouble by asking if you can use their email address, but it is the property of the association if they've given it to you. But
For
there might be
association
certain levels that
business.
you can't use it. Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. So make sure that you're choosing that
Mhm.
provider, that full service provider that's only using it for association business that you have dictated to them.
Yeah.
They are operating
Yeah.
as a arm of the association when they're doing an e-vote. Those self-service
Mhm.
portals might not be doing that. They might be gathering that information. So that's really a key difference there.
All right, we're to the end here.
All
Deep dive.
right.
This is the funnest part. Let's
Yeah.
bust some of these
I
myths. We
love I
probably
love the
already have.
the
Yeah.
graphics on this. We only use 10% of our brain.
I
That's
know.
been
It's
busted
so
so
true,
long
though.
ago, but people
Yeah.
come up with it all the time.
Okay, I think we've already busted the theory that older owners want paper. Some
Yeah.
do, but they are becoming more technology friendly than we've ever
Mhm.
seen them. Ruth, what if we don't have all the email addresses?
Get started anyway. You
Yeah,
got to start
yes.
somewhere.
We'll
Start
have more
ask
good ones.
Yeah, asking your owners when they call in to update their
Mhm.
email address. You'll find that a lot of times you just don't have it because they've lived in the association so long and never provided it. 20 years ago, I was not asked for my email when I moved in here. It just wasn't a thing then. So sometimes they just don't realize that you don't have it and that they can be getting everything electronically and make their lives easier. What about nominations from the floor, Kathy?
Yeah, yeah. Well, since we have no write-ins, we could have some crazy people come to the meeting.
Yeah,
What that would be a great thing to talk about in your resolutions. Are we going to accept nominations from the floor or not? We always say we accept anyone who raises their hand. They
right.
will find a position for
Yeah.
them. We would ask them to go through the same process that every candidate did. Make sure that they're an owner of record, that they've been vetted, all of that information, and the board can appoint those people at any
Right.
time. So
Or somebody
nominations from the
nominating.
floor are becoming
Yeah.
a thing of the past.
Put them on a
Yes.
committee. Get them on a committee.
Mhm.
Get them
Yeah. We
involved.
we
Yeah.
never say no. Anyone who raised their hand, we took them. We didn't care.
Yeah.
We talked about hybrid. We busted that. We busted no more proxies.
So
Proxies have served their purpose. Yeah.
I do have a note about the hybrid though. If you're doing a hybrid meeting and you are taking still paper ballots, and for those who attend the meeting, keep that in mind that people who are online doing it have no way to turn in a paper ballot. So they're going to need to have voted electronically before they get online. You don't want to have to try to deal with the Zoom situation where people are doing a show of hands for voting on something and you somehow have to record that so it's official, maybe take a picture. That's how they were doing it at the beginning of COVID, for those who
Mhm.
didn't know,
Yeah.
which was just kind of nutty. So keep that in
And now we
mind.
know.
Yeah, keep that in
And
mind
now we
that
know.
when you're doing those hybrids, you definitely need to add probably electronic voting to your mix.
Hmm.
We
Yeah.
talked
What
about
if
this
no one
briefly.
comes
Yeah,
forward to be a candidate? Run a
yeah,
quorum only vote. Make sure that you're reaching your quorum. Those candidates will filter in sooner or
yeah.
later. And, you may have some more people to be vetted at that meeting. Ruth, is secret really secret?
Well, that's something you have to ask your vendor. So you need to make sure that they are separating the identifiers of who voted from how they voted. So in our world, yes, secret is secret. Nobody gets that.
Yeah.
Management doesn't get it. No one can see that. In our world, actually, even our vote managers don't see it. Only our IT department
Mhm.
could go to the system and possibly pull a report if something was needed from your attorney to defend
Mhm.
something. But
Yeah.
yeah,
And
secret is
some
secret.
of those self-service and property management software do not provide that secrecy
Yes.
option. So make sure that you're looking at that too. That's a really
Yeah.
important point there.
Before we go on to the next screen, Kathy, we have a question about with the new statute, part of the statute about proxy votes. Says, how about the proxy votes counting if there's no quorum of the board at the meeting, considering the recent changes on the statute? I think you were aware that they have to have quorum of the board to have their annual meeting. With And would they count the ballots? Would they count if there's no quorum of the board, or would that have to be reconvened until the quorum of the board is there?
Gosh, that's a confusing
Yeah.
question.
Yeah.
I think that you're talking about a board meeting.
No, so the new
Oh,
sorry, so the new part of the statute is that they have to have a quorum of the board at an owner's annual meeting. Yeah, it's a little weird. I personally think that
okay.
that statute might change again. And
Hmm. Maybe I
that
purposely not paid attention to it because I don't
yeah,
like it.
yeah. And that's why you put that language on your
Yeah.
e-vote about the reconvene or adjournment thereof. So if you
Hmm.
do have to
Hmm.
reconvene something, those e-votes will count towards that reconvene. But it could be that a quorum is established by that board turning in a proxy for attendance, or that e-vote, if they actually vote online, that's considered an attendance for the meeting. So
They're
that's
in
really a
attendance.
question
Yeah.
because it's so new and so uh oddly written, oddly odd that it's written into the annual meeting that way, that's a up for your legal counsel to help you figure that one out.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah. We'll keep an eye on that.
Florida's the only state that has something like that in their statute, and they
Yeah.
just put it in. As we know, it's
Always something
new. Yeah.
silly. Yeah.
So, yeah. All right. Some more misconceptions.
Okay. Yeah.
We
We need a signature. Yes, we do. In most cases, we need an owner to sign. So make sure you have the ability to gain that signature electronically with any of the providers that you're using.
Yes. What about if you're a condo and you do a percentage voting, Kathy?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
How do you account for that?
That's
Yeah.
yes, yes, yes. That would be very confusing for. Hi, I think we have other people coming out. We're
Yeah.
probably at the
Yeah.
end. Okay, we're almost
We're
done.
almost there. Yeah.
Percentage par values, your voting provider should be able to help you with those. And even for multiple lot owners, combining those, allowing them to only vote once. But if you're self-managing or you're using the property management software, I wonder how that would work. I don't
Right.
think that it would. So make sure that you're noting that too.
And we have seen people say that, well, I can't do e-voting because I have these kind of things, these different values, these different calculations. That's definitely a misconception because most of those e-voting platforms that are out there take that into consideration and have a way for those values to be uploaded with your owner data. So when they vote, it all gets calculated and counted for you. It's what a great benefit if you have that. And no more standing at the back of the room trying to figure out all those calculations to see if you even got quorum. The systems
Yeah.
do it for you.
And remember, I'm your manager and I don't know anything about percentages on a spreadsheet. So you've really got me confused at this meeting.
Yeah. So if you have a one bedroom different than a two
Yeah.
bedroom, e-voting is going to help ease your life when it comes to the votes.
Yeah.
So, and of course, the additional cost of e-voting,
Yeah.
price of reconvenes, mailers, notices, envelopes, keep all that in mind. Sometimes, again, you see your board will see a number and be like, oh my God, we have to add that to the budget every year now. Well, how much was added with all these other items that you can take some of that away? And of course, the time going door to door, knocking and trying to get
Door to
people to
door.
come to a
No more
meeting.
door knocking
Yeah,
for anyone. Yes.
knowing you have that
We
quorum
don't
before
know.
going in.
We're
So
not
that,
sure whoever came up with the idea that managers have to door knock, but no more door knocking.
You're really looking for the end result is a trusted system, a partner when it comes to the e-vote. You're looking for something that's easy for owners to vote. You don't get miscounted ballots. We always hated it when somebody didn't sign their envelope, marked too many marks, voted for 5 people when you can only vote for 3. You don't have any of that anymore when you're working with a trusted system. You get your results instantly, much higher participation rate. As we mentioned, owners can vote anywhere, anytime with most systems, achieve quorum more reliably. As we just mentioned, no door knocking, duly elected board members with the normal rotation of terms, no longer just having to appoint and appoint. And you all look like superheroes, right?
It's okay to take a bow. This is something that you're bringing to your community that will actually work. And you
Yeah.
can just, forward those funds that you're saving to other projects. Everybody loves hearing that at the annual meeting. No more confusing proxies. Hooray.
And
I
it will
think
be a
you can
little bit
tell
of a
that we're
learning curve.
against proxies.
Yeah, it will be a learning curve initially. The first year you do it, you've got a lot to learn with that resolution and crafting that and getting owners to understand that the system that you choose is safe and secure. Hopefully you choose a safe and secure system, and getting that trust built up. But once you do it, you're like, oh, how did we not do this before? No going back
That's
after
what we
that.
hear. We
Yeah.
do hear that from a lot of our clients. They're very
Yes.
happy that they
Yeah.
made the transition. Even though they drug their feet, we had to take them on long walks on the beach and they wanted to cancel. It's funny what happens, but they did move forward with it. As always, we are the professionals and the educators. We're happy to answer questions for you at any time after this webinar. Write down our email. It's a great way to learn more about what we do. We are educators, so please be sure to look out for some of our educational webinars online too.
And as we had said at the beginning, since we don't cover our system definitively, how it works, ins and outs, pricing, things like that, you can email us at info@votehoanow.com and we'll be glad to send you an estimate. We just need the name of the association and number of homes. Okay.
Well, ladies, we just love listening to your presentation. I love how you guys work together and flow together, and I'm sure all of our CAMs can agree. We do have a question. Can we get the slides after the webinar? We've had a few questions about that. Everyone, if you could please contact Kathy and Ruth at the info email that's on the screen, take a picture of it, and I'll have the ladies put in their contact information in the chat as well. I'm sure that they'll provide it for you, or maybe they'll set up a time where they could go over this with your board members, because that would be something that I think that would be needed and something that they may do. Yes?
Yes, we do actually have twice a month.
Yeah.
We do webinars on our system that we invite you to have. You come see how it works, have your board members come, your committees, and we'll show it all how it works and answer all their questions.